Hi guys, Luton here, and today I'm going to be talking about Total Warhammer, specifically Total Warhammer 2, which is obviously coming up really soon. They made some announcements this week on the stream. I want to talk about that, but I also thought it'd be good to kind of just get back and check in with this game, because I've been playing it a little bit recently, obviously not on the streams or anything. I've been playing it just kind of for myself, but I'm having a little bit of a sort of renaissance with Total War. It's really an enjoyable game, and especially even if you go back to like Attila or any of the other Total War games, if you have someone that you can play with on a regular basis, the multiplayer can be very enjoyable, or if you have time to do a campaign, it can be really good as well. So I might actually make some more videos about this, because as I say, I've been really kind of getting back into it. I must have played through like 2 campaigns in the last few weeks. Just had a really good time with it, and as I say, if you're interested in this channel, chances are you're interested in kind of tactical strategy battle games and all this kind of stuff, and this definitely fits within that sphere. So yeah, I've got some videos coming up as well where I want to showcase a few bits and talk about some things, but today I want to talk very sort of generally, I guess, about Total Warhammer 2. The first thing I guess I want to address about is the fact that it's called Total Warhammer 2. I also will say that, you know, I got to go down to the studios the other day, so I went to Creative Assembly, we got to play Total Warhammer 2, so I've actually had hands-on with the game, got to experience it, and of course, obviously we already have Total Warhammer, so it doesn't differ that much, but they have made some changes, and we've got the new races and so on. But yeah, Total Warhammer 2, I think that's one thing which a lot of people have taken issue with, because why is it Total Warhammer 2? And the fact that it's kind of a separate game in such a small time frame, why should it not just be a DLC? And I think that's a fair point, actually. I myself am a little curious maybe as to why this is not just like a large DLC instead of a separate game. Maybe there's some technical reasons for that, I don't know, but I've not really got to the nub of that issue, but nonetheless, that's one thing that's just there. Feel free to throw your opinions about that. So I'm just going to read in no kind of real order the kind of notes and thoughts that I had about the game. So the 4 races we're going to have in Total Warhammer 2 are High Elves, Dark Elves, Lizardmen, and of course an unannounced race. There's a lot of speculation about whether that's going to be Skaven. We will wait and see. I think some of the descriptions lean towards that, but again, we'll just see what happens there. One of the things that I'll say straight out of the gate with Total Warhammer 2 is that it does integrate with the original Total Warhammer. So in terms of the landmasses, grand campaigns, being able to mix the races in multiplayer and stuff like that, that's obviously a good thing. People want to do that, and as well as being able to kind of continue your own campaigns into, you know, across the different landmasses. Your overall focus as a campaign in Total Warhammer 2 though is going to be quite different. It's really a race to the finish, where between the 4 races you're racing for control of this magical vortex that the High Elves have created, and that's the overall goal there. There are obviously kind of submissions and stuff within your campaigns, but that's where it's leading towards. But let's just kind of talk. I'm just going to go through my notes that I got from the event, and I'm just going to kind of talk through them generally. So with Lizardmen, for example, lizards, they can go on a rampage where they kind of get like a berserker rage. They basically go out of your control and will just chase after the enemy, so on and so on. Down in your actual unit panel, you can see which units are going berserker, and it's important to keep an eye on that, so that when they do come back under sort of sentient control, you can kind of bring them back to where they need to be if they've survived. Dragons can now breathe fire as well, but that's on a cooldown. It's not mana related, so they basically, once they breathe fire, you just wait and then you can use it again. They've got all the usual fare of normal units, flying units, elite units, so everything's stacking up there as usual from top to bottom, units to counter, other things to be aware of, stuff like this. Races like High Elves as well can call in impressive magic, just as others did in Total War Warhammer, so again we've got that going on there. The end game for Total War, it was really always going to be a sandbox, first, you know, creating your version of things, and especially with historical games, the previous historical Total War games, you're always kind of tied into historical themes, and also, you know, the constraints of the time events, you know, because it's historical, so stuff like a civil war would kick off, Mongols appearing on the horizon, so on and so on. Warhammer 2, it's on a completely separate continent from the original Total Warhammer. Now, one of the major changes in general in Total War Warhammer has of course been magic. Now, magic enables you to use large swathes of damage to your enemy, spawnable units, and this kind of change was always going to be a major step away from the historical series that's been the focus of Total War for the longest time. Now, these changes can be seen as taking away from people who like to lead with a strategy and have tactics, bringing in elements which are so powerful. We'll kind of obviously reap through that, people that played Total War traditionally. But the important important thing to remember with the Magic is that Total War Warhammer and both 1 and now 2, they're really games which stand apart from those previous titles. So stepping into battles, you just simply need to be aware of these new elements and what they can do, and take that into consideration with your strategy. As with so many games now, it's a classic adage of it's relatively easy to learn but it's harder to master. It's about knowing which units counter which, how to lay out your army, and how to read and use the landscape to your own advantage. Now, another big announcement this week is that free-for-all battles are going to be returning in Total Warhammer 2. That's pretty exciting, and I think that's going to be awesome for some great multiplayer action. So currently it's a 4-player free-for-all mode only, with 4 specifically, so no less and no more. What they want to do is they want to keep it focused, they want to keep it playable, so you're not going up to a higher amount of players, especially when you think of the FPS with units and all that kind of clutter. Also, in terms of actual unit numbers on the ground, you want to keep it enjoyable. You don't want it to just be like a dragging war of attrition. You want to keep it understandable, you want to be able to control your units, move them around. That's only going to be a custom multiplayer mode, so they're looking to bring it into quick battles in the future, but right now it'll be a custom, so you have to kind of basically join up with people. It's going to be scored resolution based, so this is where it gets pretty interesting with free-for-all mode. So the points scored are based on the value of the damage you do. Okay, so in a free-for-all mode, the health of a unit, okay, will be divided by the cost of a unit. So that means an expensive unit will give you more score to health versus a weaker unit. Yeah, this should help you score according to the cost of your army overall. There's also a last man standing bonus as well. So the map layout should be, for a free-for-all mode, it's going to be fairly open, and therefore more chaotic, as opposed to featuring buildings which could give then an advantage just sort of who is going to rush to that first. Maps are going to be designed for free-for-all only specifically. They need to stop that player from being too chaotic, but also they need to limit player movement somewhat to enable, actually, so that we can actually going to get some good gameplay happening there. Now, you will be able to use factions from the first Total War Warhammer if you're playing multiplayer in 2, but obviously if you don't have one of those, you won't be able to play against factions from the game you don't own. When it comes to free-for-all, these are going to be held in separate lobbies, so players can join their own game or both, yeah? Now, when it comes to choosing your units in a free-for-all mode, the first thing you're going to think of is, well, what happens if someone takes an unfair set of units, like they stack a load of large units or something like this? Well, just because it's a free-for-all mode doesn't mean that you can't necessarily ally up with someone quickly. So if you see that someone has taken a bit of a bullshit unit setup, there's no reason why you couldn't just grab one of the other guys, ally up quickly, smash them down, and then you go back to the free-for-all between the 3 of you. So hopefully we won't see too much of that. Hopefully we're not going to see a kind of Overwatch situation where it's kind of like, all the same things stacked up, because people know that that's going to be very difficult for others to counter. I think also whenever you're playing these kind of free-for-all modes, or even multiplayer modes in general, when it comes to Total War, it's good to always have like a bit of a sportsmanship element to it, a bit of a gentleman's agreement to it. So if you can find like 3 or 4 guys you want to play with, and you can basically make some ground rules as to how you want to play that out, I think those kind of games generally get more enjoyable. And most of the time when I play Total War multiplayer, that's what I tend to do. The guys I play it with, when I go multiplayer up, we kind of have an understanding of like, look, when we create our army, this is how we're going to do it. Sometimes we just do random armies and we give each other like kind of like a free save out. So like if basically people want to change out a unit towards the end, it just kind of can take away natural advantage whether people favor one faction or one other, and therefore taking away that natural handicap, if you want, makes the game more enjoyable, because it kind of puts people on the level playing field, or it actually puts sometimes people at a bit of a disadvantage. They have to try and counter that out. Overall, it can make the battles a lot more interesting. So back to the damage in the free-for-all mode. The damage you deal is tracked, so there's no kill bonus for the player who lands like a killing blow on a unit. You can't win either just by outlasting the others. It's based on who is doing the most damage overall. So technically, you could actually get wiped out and then still be the overall victor if you've done enough damage. Now also, healing is something which exists in Total War Warhammer, and the healing is a bit of a contentious thing in the context of a free-for-all mode where damage is what you're actually looking to do. Because if you think about it, if you heal your units, you're actually running the risk of enabling your enemies to gain more damage. Yeah, because it's not about actually just killing that unit, it's about how much damage you're dealing to that unit. So if you damage them like 50%, heal them up, and then your enemy damage them another 50%, they could potentially gain more than 100% damage they actually dealt to that unit, which is going to give them more score. In the same way, using a lot of cheap units to overwhelm, like zombies, that's probably also a bad idea, because just having a mass of units dealing the amount of damage to those, okay, that again could potentially give your opponent an advantage. So there's going to be some really interesting plays when it comes to free-for-all mode in actually selecting your units, not just based on how well you want to do in terms of, like, what are you confident? How do you think you're going to wreck your enemy? It's also going to be about managing the amount of damage they do to you. So there's a lot of considerations to make when you're actually going to be playing these games. So coming back to the campaign a little bit, now every race in Total War Warhammer 2, and in just Total War Warhammer in general, they've got really unique campaign stuff. This was true in the first one, and Warhammer 2 has just basically turned up the volume a little bit on each faction. The Lizardmen have a number of unique features. They've got a system to get their settlements back in a kind of chain link way to improve the strength for their race and the way they build up. So stuff like this. You have missions that might give you a special unit, so there's all these kind of extra elements going on within the campaign. Stuff like ruined temple cities, you can build on that or you can excavate it. So it's treasure hunting, you can choose to treasure hunt. If it's successful, you can choose what to do. So there's little narratives, maybe gain a buff for your units, maybe there's a negative consequence, maybe it's a chaos shrine which will speed up corruption or curse a trait on you. So there's, again, as even with the first Total Warhammer, all these things which are going on separately. And also I think, again, compared to the historical series, in the world of Warhammer and, kind of Games Workshop, whether it's Warhammer or 40k, that IP gives a ton of options for developers to reach out and create new systems, new concepts, abilities, and so on. I actually think when you look at any game based on a Games Workshop product, you should really be judging it not just based on the mechanics, but how well the developer has actually utilized the lore and the kind of background which is there. Because the lore and the background for Warhammer or Warhammer 40,000 are immensely rich. The amount of detail there is fantastic, and so you can really tell the detail and effort which has gone into a game depending on how well those developers have utilized that, as opposed to some games which, as we see very often, just get turned out, and what they've done is they've scraped the surface and gone, yeah, this is something, we'll just bang it out there. Okay, whereas you look at a game which is produced either by Creative Assembly or I would say Relic, and they go into a lot more detail there. Now the other races may still appear and have a foothold on this second continent, but these are more like AI factions. Okay, the 4 primary races are the ones that you're going to be going for the goal in Warhammer 2. In the endgame, you're going to have 3 settlements chosen with a resource required, and you have to hold them for a number of turns in order to complete the overall goal. And this is when other factions are going to attempt to take control of these for you, so that's more kind of like the endgame in Warhammer 2. You're going to have other encounters as well, so stuff in the sea, like reefs and creatures, etc. But in sea, you're not going to actually have battles per se. They're going to auto-resolve, and I think that's going to disappoint some people. For me, ultimately, not the biggest deal. I was never a massive fan of sea battles, personally. But I think, again, some people are going to like that, some people not. Basically, I think the point is that the landscape, by the way, in Total Warhammer 2 is amazingly beautiful. It's probably one of the best landscapes in a Total War game, I think, in terms of a campaign map landscape I'm talking about. Probably one of the most visually impressive that we've seen. And so I think they wanted to really, really focus in on that, and that's probably why they detracted and sort of didn't go down that sea battle thing. Also, maybe it's just not that important, and I think whenever you're making a game, there are always going to be things where you have to kind of go, maybe we just don't go down this road. So now with the 2 games, Warhammer and also Total Warhammer 2, you're going to see the world now as one complete map, not 2 separate ones. So you can travel around and expand across the 2. It will still have the standard victory conditions as well as the special new Vortex goal for those races in Warhammer 2. Now once that's out of the way, you can then continue on your own style of gameplay to expand however you want to. But that's often as well been a little bit of a, once you complete that end goal, what do? You just keep expanding. It would be really nice to see them actually focus on that, or something to do it even as like kind of maybe weekly goals or something like this that could be implemented in a DLC fashion or something like this. I don't know, it would be cool if, like, once you've completed your overall campaign objective, it's not just like expand, and then there's not much more to it than that, because after a while that can get pretty stale. It'd be really cool if there could be something done beyond like the primary goal that would just kind of keep your interest and that could rotate and so on and so on and so on. I don't know, who knows where that could lead to, but that would be a really cool thing to see. Now in Total Warhammer 2, each faction is going to have their own favoured climate as well. So if you move to a different area, those settlements may face negative penalties like construction taking longer, public order lessened, all these kind of usual things that you're going to expect. So in the game we have forest, we have mountain, we have desert, we have savanna, alright, and so obviously if you have lizard men, they're going to be coming probably from like a jungle environment. If they have to go into a desert, they're not going to be too happy about that. And it's not about it's not going to be like vampires in the in Warhammer, Total War Warhammer, where they can spread vampiric corruption. You can't spread a jungle, so it's like that's going to make it a big challenge for those races to expand beyond those borders. Now with the races in Warhammer 2, they've added the traits, for example, they're more visible. The UI should help you to understand this a little bit better, and from when I was exploring and checking that out, that was definitely true. You have got race abilities such as summoning cold ones for lizard men. It's very similar to summoning zombies for vampires in the original Warhammer stuff. These traits are only going to exist for the races, obviously, in Warhammer 2. Now the dragons I spoke about earlier as well with the fire breath, that's also going to retroactively upgrade, so that should be something which crosses over. Other things being added, all major settlements can now have 8 slots as opposed to the previous 6. That's really, really awesome, because that means it gives you a lot more option and strength in those settlements that you're going to create, and then you can get also more legendary buildings that are going to be exclusive to certain regions. So that's a really cool thing. That means that when you're doing campaign, you're really going to be able to strengthen up some of those settlements much more than you've been able to do so before, and that's going to be, well, it's going to make some of those battles more interesting. It's also going to give you more strength as a player in terms of the territory you're controlling. Now, something I specifically wanted to know about was that in Warhammer, Total War Warhammer, you really only had those open battles or siege battles, okay? You didn't see town battles like we would see in Total War Attila. Now, I wanted to know about this because I really enjoyed the town battles, where it's, you know, it's not like a castle, but it's not just an open field. It's like a little town, something in between, and it's more of a kind of skirmish battle, right? Now, in Warhammer 2, apparently there are going to be something that's a bit of a crossover, but these will not really be a town battle as we saw in Attila. So that wasn't really elaborated on. I really would like to know what specifically that is. I want to see more of that, because those kind of battles were really, really interesting. So I want to find out what the deal is with that. We didn't really get a lot of information about it. I guess we'll just see as time goes on. Now, all in all, for my trip to Creative Assembly, had a good day, had a really good chat with the devs. They were happy to answer basically any questions we had. I had some good playtime with a hard battle, and we should have some gameplay for that coming up pretty soon. But I'm very interested in this game now. As I say, I kind of had taken a bit of a break away from Total War and Total War Warhammer for a while. But like I said, coming up for this event, I decided to get my hand back in again and played a couple of campaigns. I had a really, really fun time doing it. So I've got like a battle that I want to post this week, and you guys can check that out. If you've not seen really Total War before, it's actually kind of surprising. When I've posted this game on my channel before, a lot of people saying like, what is this game, or where can I get this? It seems a lot of people not aware of this as a title. If you've never seen Total War before, it's a very, very enjoyable game. You can go check out some of my videos, or another producer that I have worked with and I know very well is Todd Lionheart. He's actually linked on my channel page, so you should go check out Lionheart. He's in the notes below as well. I just thought I'd put him there. If you want to find out more about Total War, he really, really knows what he's talking about. He's got the biggest Total War channel in the UK, but I'm planning to post a bit more Total War stuff myself as well. I think it's always good to have a bit of change and refresh on the channel. And you remember my friend Flamefang, he's a big Total War player, and maybe I'll have some battles versus him, see if I can't beat him, because he's bloody good and I always struggle. So we'll see how that goes down. But yeah, if you enjoyed this video, guys, please drop a like as always. If you want to see some more Total War content, drop a comment down below. If you're interested in Total War Warhammer 2, or you didn't play Total War Warhammer originally, got some questions about that, throw that down in the comments as well. But I've got some gameplay footage coming up pretty soon, as I said, and I'll look to post some more videos, and maybe I'll do some more beginner guides, because I know some of you guys enjoyed the previous beginner guides that I did on the channel. So maybe for those of you who've never played this game before, I'll throw out a couple of those. As I say, any questions, throw it down. Alright guys, thank you very much, hope you enjoyed. I'll see you next time.